Look at the weather.
It's beautiful here.
Non-stop rain.
Oh, man, it is a blazer out there.
It's cold and it's shivery.
It is cold.
Really coming down here.
I really enjoy your weather reports.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we're talking weather in a whole new way. From historical events to what's coming up, plus weather news, science, safety, fun facts, and more.
I like where this is going.
This is Weather Weekly. Weather Weekly with Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey.
Hey, welcome. Glad to have you along here for episode number 19. I'm Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey with Wish TV in Indianapolis. Always a pleasure to have you along here. Man, we're just rolling by middle of June now, and it's starting to feel like it over a lot of the nation's midsection especially, and we're going to talk about the heat out west here in just a bit in headlines. But finally hit our first 90-degree days here in Indianapolis. Did it last Friday, last Saturday. Today is June 15th, so it took a little while to get there, but back-to-back 90-degree days, the humidity to go along with it as well. So starting to feel a lot more like summer. I'm going to be riding solo with you here today, but we got a good episode hopefully for you here, talking about some historical events in Indiana during the month of June. And boy, June has provided a lot of interesting events. I kind of was spending some time over the last several days preparing for this podcast, and man, it's just kind of all over the place. You think June, you think starts to get hot, starts to get humid. Of course, you'll have your bouts of storms. One of the more active months that we have as we get on the tail end of severe weather season here in central Indiana in June. But there's a whole lot more than that. Just a long laundry list, and I'm going to go through with you. And I'm not going to hit every significant event because records do go back to the late 1800s. So we'd be spending a lot of time together here. And some of them will hit up on other future podcast episodes. But I've got a handful here that are interesting, and some of them are way back. So it's kind of hard to find some info, but some good stuff. So hopefully you stick around for that. I do want to get to some weather headlines here before we take a quick break and dive into the heart of the podcast here. We have another named tropical system in the Atlantic as of the Tuesday morning, June 15th, 5 a.m. advisory. We have Tropical Storm Bill, which is centered right now basically due east of, let's call it Washington, D.C., not moving real fast north. Actually, it is moving a little bit faster than most storms, northeast at 31 miles per hour, and the max wind speeds at 50 miles per hour, maintaining storm strength, tropical storm strength as it moves northeast, so away from the U.S. mainland. This will not present an issue. However, as we have already entered into the beginning of tropical season in the Atlantic, that begins on June 1st. Of course, we kind of touched on it in some of our other headlines in the podcast that several forecast agencies, whether it be NOAA or Colorado State University, also puts out a pretty good forecast every year. Both are calling for an above average hurricane season or tropical season in the Atlantic, but are falling short of calling it, record-breaking. Obviously, last year was a record-breaking year. It would be tough to surpass that, but we do look like to be pretty busy in the Atlantic. Will many of them make the mainland? That's going to be the bigger question here, but already kind of busy. We're up to B now, middle of June. We may see some development. There's about a 20% chance over the next 5 days of some tropical development over the Gulf in southern Texas. So that may be our next named system. So something worth watching. I already kind of briefly touched on our first 90-degree days here in central Indiana. That happened Friday and Saturday. Back-to-back days is the first time we've hit 90 since last September in 2020. So it's been a while, but finally ramping up the heat. Looks like we're going to kind of avoid that here for the next few days. With more comfortable air coming in. We've got a quiet weather pattern. We'll talk more about that in the extended forecast coming up at the end of the podcast, as we typically do. This isn't specifically weather related, but I think it's interesting. And if you want to check this out, I did post a video on my Facebook page pertaining to this story. This comes from the AP, and this happened on Monday, June 14th. An explosion at a northern Illinois chemical plant sparked a massive fire, sent flames and huge plumes of thick black smoke high into the air, debris raining onto the ground, prompting evacuations at about 7 a.m. Central Daylight Time. Emergency crews rushed to the scene of a fire near Rockton, northwest of Chicago, at a Chemtool Incorporated, a company that manufactures lubricants, grease products, and other fluids, and is, according to the company, the largest manufacturer of grease in the Americas. Rockton Fire Department Chief Kirk Wilson said about 70 employees who were at the plant when firefighters arrived were evacuated safely, so that's the good news. One firefighter did suffer minor injuries. And so here's the interesting part here and how it's related to weather and why I'm bringing it up on the podcast. Following reports that the plume of smoke were so big, they were picked up on weather radar. The Rockton Police Department posted an alert at 8:46 warning that fire officials had ordered a mandatory evacuation near the plant. It told people to evacuate homes and businesses and to await further instructions. So why this kind of pertains. Obviously, you could see it on radar, and I believe, if memory serves me correctly, because I was jumping back and forth on my Radar Scope app, you could flip between the Chicago radar and the Milwaukee radar. Both of them were picking this up. Again, it said in the AP story northwest of Chicago. It's actually a little bit closer to Rockford, Illinois, for those of you that are familiar with that area. So north central Illinois. It was just east of Rockford. It's right along the Wisconsin-Illinois border. But what I did post on my Facebook page, really cool Go 16 imagery that I picked off the College of DuPage website that shows the black smoke coming off the visible imagery from that fire before you got some kind of puffy cumulus clouds that went overhead. But you do notice, if you look carefully, that some of the upper level winds, maybe about, 5,000 to 10,000 feet up, were kicking up at around 30 to 35 knots, I think, when I was looking at when all that happened. So you're talking about 35 to 40 mile per hour winds in the upper levels. And that was enough to kind of kick that thing south and to the east a little bit. And so I don't think it was ever visible at times here in central Indiana. But if you look at that imagery that I put on my Facebook page, you can see that some of the aerosols may have been able to creep into northwestern portions of central Indiana. So it didn't cause any problems. It was so well aloft at that time. In fact, just viewing the cross sections of radar, pretty quickly, that was able to rise to almost or nearly 10,000 feet. So, I mean, it was up there in terms of altitude when that fire was at its peak. So something to check out. I thought that was just kind of interesting, cool. Luckily, nobody was hurt. They're getting it under control. But I from what we were reporting on our newscast this morning, from The Wire, it said that firefighters expect this to kind of go on for the next couple of days. With it being a grease fire, it's going to take some time for that to get out. But it is better. You can't really pick that up on radar on satellite imagery anymore. So that's good news. One last headline for you. Nationally speaking, we already talked about the hurricanes or the tropical systems, I should say. Big time drought going on right now in the western U.S. In fact, I'm pulling up the drought monitor right now, but you're talking about extreme or exceptional drought currently going on right now in California, the entire state of California, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, and Utah, and almost the entire state of New Mexico are under some form of drought. The hardest hit areas is California, much of southern Nevada, much of western and southwestern Utah, good chunk of Arizona, and there's kind of parts in western Colorado and kind of scattered all over New Mexico that is classified under an exceptional drought. So that's about the highest level that you can get. You also have some areas that are under extreme drought conditions stretching from Oregon to Washington. And as a result, you've got some wildfires just grinding along in Arizona, California, and Utah. And they don't have any relief in sight, unfortunately, for resolving that drought. And that is now we're getting to a point of the season where you need something kind of significant to kind of help bust that drought up, and we just don't see it anytime soon, unfortunately. So they're kind of getting in there. They're getting into their fire season, because this is typically a dry part of the year for that part of the country. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as those fires unfortunately continue to expand. So that does it for headlines here. Of course, again, we will talk about our extended forecast here in central Indiana at the end of the podcast. We're going to take a quick break here. Coming back, we're going to talk about historical severe weather events for the month of June in central Indiana. That's all coming your way next here on Weather Weekly.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke, or maybe a steamy billionaire. You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Ali Hazelwood, the latest romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Welcome back to Weather Weekly, episode number 19. We're riding solo here in today's episode. We'll stick with the theme of severe weather in June, as we're already kind of halfway through the month, and severe weather kind of historical events that have happened in June. They're all over the map, as I kind of previewed here before the break. I've got a whole laundry list, and I'm not going to hit up on every one because I'd be here all day. But there are some significant ones that I do want to kind of walk through here, and I've got some greater detail on some of the more significant events that happened. Some of them were way back, so I had trouble kind of finding more information on some of the events that happened in the late 1800s, for example, which I'll talk about. But worth noting on this. And I think it's also worth noting kind of, let's place the table here to talk about June, its significance when it comes to severe weather season. Purdue has a great meteorology school, and they've got some good stuff on their websites there when it comes to the weather department. They have kind of a graph, nice and clean, of all of the tornadoes between 1950 and 2018 that they pulled off the Storm Prediction Center. All right. And for the month of June, 24% of the tornadoes that happened in that time frame, 1950 to 2018, happened in the month of June. So nearly a quarter of the tornadoes happened in that time frame in the month of June, and it was the largest by far. The next one you have to go to is April with 18% and May and 16%. That's followed up by, August here with 9% and March with 9% before you see a pretty steep drop off getting into the later months of the summer and then heading into the fall. What's also interesting to note here, and we stress this during severe weather season when we really talk about tornadoes here, and we probably brought it up on the podcast, but I think it's also always worthy of noting this, that there is no month where we're at 0%. Both December and January had 2% of the reported tornadoes between 1950 and 2018. In that time frame, that's 1,408 tornadoes. Only 3 of those were of the EF5 strength. The vast majority of them were EF1 at 570. There were 30 EF4s, 99 EF3s. EF2's at 304 and EF0's at 401. Total fatalities, 330. Total injuries, just over 5,300. Again, you want to check this out for yourself. This is, you can Google search Indiana tornado statistics, Purdue University, and it'll give you this dashboard, and it is awesome. It's the Indiana State Climate Office also. You could search for that. But it's got everything you need there. By the way, the most tornadoes that we've had in this time frame here, 2011, we had 72 tornadoes. And that was the most by far in that specific time frame as well. So again, keeping with the theme that in that 1950 to 2018 timeframe, almost a quarter of the tornadoes happened in June. We kind of walk through some of the active weather that has happened in the month of June. I want to start early, and we're going to start big. We passed the anniversary of this already, but June 2nd, 1990, largest tornado outbreak in state history occurs. 37 tornadoes touched down, and it left 8 dead. Now, this was just off of the National Weather Service Indianapolis website, so we did some searching here to kind of get more information. This wasn't just an Indiana event. This was a huge tornado outbreak across the Midwest in 1990. All right, so again, that was on June 2nd, and I think 3rd also. It did kind of move into Ohio. So kind of the synopsis here, the June 1990 Lower Ohio Valley tornado outbreak spawned total 66 tornadoes, including 7 EF4s or F4s is what it was classified back then. Southern Illinois, central and southern Indiana, southwestern Ohio, northern Kentucky on June 2nd and 3rd, 1990. In Indiana, as I just mentioned, 37 tornadoes formed, breaking the single-day record of 21 set during the super outbreak of April 3rd, 1974. We've talked a little bit about that. Stephen, Deanna, and myself talked about that as several podcasts ago about the significance of that April 3rd super outbreak. This one surpassed that. So this comes from some of the Weather Service offices here in the Storm Prediction Center on how the setup was. This is a weather podcast, so we're going to get a little nerdy with you, all right? On June 2nd, an unseasonably intense surface low over eastern North Dakota brought with it a cold front across the Mississippi Valley. Ahead of the front, highly unstable air combined with a strong jet stream that increased the synoptic scale lifting, favoring supercell development, all right? So you have all the ingredients. Bottom line, if that you kind of glazed over and said, what? Basically, several ingredients that you look for severe weather development were all very much in play, and so the atmosphere was ripe for some nasty storms. Meanwhile, backed southerly low-level winds brought high dew points well into the region. That's another thing you need. The National Severe Storms Forecast Center, also now known as the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, put out a high risk. That is rare. Back then, they only had 3 risks. They had slight, moderate, and high over much of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and northern Kentucky. Obviously, now hindsight says that was a bullseye forecast. Notable feature for this outbreak is that there was a sector of weak tornadoes north of Terre Haute, while a sector of strong and vicious tornadoes developed south of the city. This could perhaps be attributed to the storms in central Indiana having weaker helicity or measurement of storm rotation, resulting in many of the storms farther to the north being left moving south. So that was an interesting setup. You've got the whole atmosphere just kind of spinning. So it goes on, kind of lists each and every tornado. Again, there were a ton of them. A lot of them were EF0s, did some minor damage. And you're talking in terms of location, you didn't get very far north of I-70 for the most part. There were some, but a lot of the nasty storms stayed in the southern third of the state. Places like where we had the EF4, Jackson County. We had an EF3 in Washington, Jackson, Scott, and Jefferson County. We had another EF3, or F3, I should refer it back to the old name, F3 in Floyd and Clark County. We had another F4 in Dearborn, Indiana. And then that eventually moved into Hamilton, Butler, and Warren counties in Ohio. So that's down near the Cincinnati area. And then you also had an F3 in Clark County, Jefferson County, and then ended up moving into Trimble, Kentucky County. All right. So lots of activity there. And I'm going to hit up on some of the big ones. I'm not going to go over all, 37 tornadoes that happened that day. but I do want to hit up on the ones that caused the extreme amount of damage, specifically in Indiana. Petersburg, Indiana. This is the write-up on that here. Powerful F4 tornado developed west of Union and proceeded to enter that community from Gibson County. The tornado completely leveled one home, killing 2 occupants, and also blew another 30 feet off its base. After passing through a wooded area, the tornado hit Petersburg, killing 4 people there. Upon entering the town limits, it leveled a nursing home plus an apartment complex and up to 10 homes, having now killed 6 people. The tornado was the deadliest to hit Indiana since the 1974 outbreak that we previously mentioned. It then struck the business district in downtown Petersburg and destroyed 19 businesses before going on to level 168 additional homes and damage an elementary school in Petersburg. The town became the hardest hit in Indiana on June 2nd, 1990. The tornado destroyed half of Petersburg, including the home of the mayor. 60 others were injured by this tornado. So that was the biggest one of the day, at least in terms of our state. Another one here, this was impacting parts of Indiana, parts of Ohio. A violent nighttime tornado began west of Bright, Indiana, with 50 homes destroyed in that area. 4 of the homes were of brick constructions, yet were completely leveled. The F4 tornado continued to produce F4 damage in Ohio as it hit the communities of Harrison, Crosby Township, and New Baltimore. Hamilton County alone, the tornado damaged 800 to 900 homes. So now you're starting to get into suburbs of Cincinnati, and 31 businesses plus 3 schools. Of these, 32 homes were reported destroyed, some so completely that their foundations were left practically barren. Steel beams 18 inches wide, 75 feet long, and 5/8 an inch in thickness were deformed and brought to ground level in Harrison. The tornado continued into the southern part of Fairfield and surrounding areas of Butler County, where this is in Ohio, where 19 homes and 4 trailers were destroyed, with 58 homes, 22 trailers, and 5 apartment buildings damaged. The tornado continued into Warren County before dissipating near Mason. A total of 37 people were injured in this tornado. And again, a lot of the stuff that I said there, after it moved out of Indiana, and Bright, again, Indiana was the hardest hit in our state. It moved into suburbs of Cincinnati, not actually into Cincinnati proper, but into those suburbs, and that's where a lot of those problems came from. So the aftermath. People erected makeshift shelters in Petersburg. It was declared, obviously, a state of emergency with half the town destroyed. The tornado outbreak was the most destructive to hit Indiana since that April 3rd super outbreak in 1974. Across Indiana, Illinois, and Kentucky, the entire outbreak resulted in 313 homes destroyed. 76%, I think this is the interesting one right here, 76% of them in Indiana alone, and 892 damaged. Fully 75% of them in Indiana. So it's obvious that Indiana took the brunt of that. Again, that happened in 1990 in June, 2nd of June. So that was a rough one, not that long ago, 1990. June 3rd, 2008, near Moscow, an EF3 tornado. I think a lot of us remember this. EF3 tornado moved through portions of Rush County. So Moscow is southern parts of Rush County. That would be south of Rushville, north of Greensburg. If you're real familiar with that area, I am. My family grew up there. Milroy is just to the east of Moscow, and it destroyed their beautiful covered bridge that they had there in town, just to the west of State Road 3 and to the south of State Road 244. Let's see here. In 2005, Frankfort, that would be Clinton County, winds estimated near 90 miles per hour, damaged homes and businesses. There's a few other ones here that were just kind of interesting. I'll kind of skip through some. I'll bring this one up. This one was interesting, I thought, because we came off of a week where we had a very muggy air mass here in central Indiana, and we had a bit of a rotating surface low that moved through the state. And so for about 3 days, we were kind of forecasting the potential for what we call land spouts. They go by a lot of different names: cold air funnels, land spouts, depending on the situation, dust devils. They're not tornadoes, okay? They are, it's created by rotation that's at the surface and not from the parent thunderstorm. They can be attached to a cloud, but a lot of times, at least in my experience that I've seen, these things will get diminished once storm kind of gets going and the rain comes up. It chokes off the surface circulation. Very rarely, I don't want to say never, but very rarely do these ever touch the ground. If they do, they can do some minor damage. We're talking maybe, pulling a few shingles off the roof or, pulling down some tree limbs, that kind of thing. Not a real significant issue. You should still treat that as a tornado. Seek shelter if you see it. But anyway, back to my point. 1974, June 10th, a cold air funnel or a land spout became a brief tornado near Carmel, and it did do some minor damage. So it can happen. Doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen. Let's see here. 1880. This one I had to kind of dig in the archives, and it was kind of tough to see anything real significant in terms of information on this one. 1880, June 14th, 5 strong tornadoes strike central Indiana, killing at least 18 people. Cattle are said to be killed in droves, and orchards were ruined. The German Lutheran church in Cicero is blown down, and its bell carried 50 feet away. All right. So that was in Hamilton County. I did find, doing some digging, that there were also this is an into addition, but this will count with some of the fatalities from that day. Shelby and Rush counties, there was an F4 strength, 4 fatalities, over 7 farms damaged in Shelby and Rush counties, where I believe that tornado that day, that F4 tornado began in Morristown in Shelby County and moved into northwestern portions of Rush County near the town of Carthage. All right. So that was an interesting one. 1880. 1987, tornado touched down northwest of Danville, hit a pig farm and lifted several pigs in the air, believe it or not. Let's see here. 1992, on the night of the 17th and 18th, a fast-moving squall line moved across the state, causing widespread wind damage. Some storms also brought large hail, and flash flooding. I mentioned that because it was a widespread event. And again, this was 1992, June 17th and 18th. This actually stemmed from a tornado outbreak, from June 14th to the 18th in 1992. That actually was more impactful for places like Minnesota and the upper plains, so the Dakotas, than it was for us here. We just kind of got the tail end of that, and we were on the lower end of that, so you didn't have a lot of the dynamics coming in from just kind of the research I was looking at. But that was a pretty significant storm complex that hit the upper Midwest in the early 90s. Just kind of looking at the broad synopsis here, the tornado outbreak of June 14th and 18th. And again, this isn't going to be really pertaining to us too much, but we got kind of the tail end of this. One of the largest tornado outbreaks on record in U.S. history affected portions of the central United States from June 14th to June 18th, 1992. The outbreak began on June 14th when 6 tornadoes touched down in Colorado and Idaho. 58 tornadoes were reported across portions of the Great Plains on June 15th. And 65 more were reported over much of the central U.S. on June 16th. The 123 tornadoes that touched down on June 15th to 16th make the 2-day span the 5th largest 2-day tornado outbreak in U.S. history, behind the 1974 super outbreak. We've talked about that one already. May 2004 tornado outbreak sequence, the tornado outbreak of April 14th through 16th in 2011, and the 2011 super outbreak. 28 more tornadoes touched down on June 17th, and 13 more touched down on June 18th, giving this outbreak 170 confirmed tornadoes. And there were, I believe, there was one EF5 or F5 still in the the old Fujita scale rating, and 3 F4s. So there were some pretty nasty ones with that. So we missed out on the brunt of that nasty complex, but we obviously still didn't escape damage. We got pretty nasty wind gusts out of that storm as it moved through. 1942, from Moran to Kokomo, a tornado kills 4 people and injures 150 more. The greatest damage was in the Kokomo area. I found this on the Indiana Tornado blog. You can search for that, indianatornadoes.blogspot.com. And this gentleman has written up a little synopsis on this, mainly for Kokomo, and I mentioned that that's where most of the damage was done. June 20th, 1942, he writes, I haven't done many posts about pre-1950 tornadoes, so we'll take a couple minutes to discuss the Kokomo area tornado of June 20th, 1942. The violent F4 touched down in the early evening hours south of the tiny Clinton County community of Moran. It moved east-northeast across central Clinton County before entering Howard County and taking aim on Kokomo. The tornado apparently reached maximum intensity in Kokomo, where it killed 2 people and heavily damaged the south side of the city before dissipating shortly thereafter. A total of 4 people lost their lives. Interestingly, the track was very similar to the April 11th, 1965 Palm Sunday tornado track. So that's an area that region, you think southern Kokomo, was hit hard in 1942, 1965 again with the Palm Sunday tornado. In recent memory, we had the tornado that happened, what that would have been 2017, I believe, when we all saw the images of the Starbucks that was destroyed. So that's, south end of Kokomo, that's been kind of rough. So kind of a tornado alley area, if you will, with and that, those were mega tornadoes that hit on that south end. The weaker of those was the one that was probably more recent. I found this one interesting. June 20th, 1990. At Decatur, lightning strikes a house with such force that it blows a plastic switch plate off of a light switch and embeds it in the opposite wall. Let me read that again. Lightning strikes a house with such force that it blows a plastic switch plate off a light switch and embeds it into an opposite wall. So, not necessarily severe weather related. You can get lightning from any thunderstorm that kind of just forms, right? That's pretty significant. That was interesting. Let's see, just kind of skimming through some of the other ones. Oh, this is a good one right here. Not severe weather related, but this is good. And I think it's interesting too, because, what was it? A couple of weeks ago, we talked to Scott Sander about some of the more significant weather-related Indianapolis 500s in history, and one of them that we went to was 1992. It is the coolest 500 in history. And so let's stick with 1992. About a month later, June 22nd, 1992, low temperatures in the 30s in the north and central parts of the state cause a damaging frost. Indianapolis's low temperature of 37 degrees is the lowest ever recorded in the city during the summer months. So we made it down to 37 in the middle of June. I can't remember that. I distinctly remember the 500 being cool. I remember Al Unser's win. I don't remember, I guess I was only 11 at that point, but still, I was starting to kind of get interested in weather at that point. I don't remember that off the top of my head, though. I would have been out of school. I must have been sleeping in late, or my mom let me sleep in late, because obviously you're not going out and playing in temperatures like that in the morning. Let's stick with temperatures, all right? Let's skip ahead to the 28th. This is interesting. 1874 at Indianapolis, 85 degrees is the warmest low temperature on record for the city. 85. Can you imagine that now? Thank goodness, we have air conditioners, but my goodness, 85 degrees for an overnight low, so you don't get any cooler than that. And 1874, no air conditioners, no fans. That's rough. I'm not real comfortable when it's like 70 for an overnight low. And there's mornings where when we get kind of in the heart of the summer that we may not get below 75, but I'm grateful that I don't think I've experienced in my lifetime many overnights where we've been in the upper 70s or even around 80, let alone 85. So that's interesting. June 28th, 1902, in central Indiana, 10 people are killed by 2 tornadoes. One of the fatalities is a man who was attending a funeral service at a home in the town of Cleveland. 5 glass factories are wrecked in Hancock County. That was June 28th, 1902. In 1929, on June 29th, at Indianapolis, the highest wind gust in city history is measured at 111 miles per hour. That is yet to be broken. My assumption is that is coming with probably severe wind gusts. 1929. Lastly, let's see. Again, to wrap up the month, June 30th. 1877, Waverly, Franklin, and St. Paul, a tornado strikes, killing 10. The tornado picks up a school near Waverly and moves it 50 yards down a hill, carries another school across a field, scattering its furniture for half a mile. That was, again, June 30th, 1877. These are only the major events that have happened in the month of June. We could probably, and I touched on maybe a third of the list that I have that I'm holding right now. There are plenty more that we probably could have talked about, and if we would have dug in a little bit deeper, probably could have researched, and you know what? We'll be doing this podcast for a while, so it gives us some other ammunition to kind of jump into as we reach into next year and the years to come. But goes to show June can be an extremely active month. Obviously, high on tornadoes, high on severe weather, high on lightning problems there. There was a few that I didn't read where it caused injuries, fires, etc. with lightning. That doesn't necessarily even have to come with a severe storm. But then I thought the interesting temperature extremes there with the coldest low that we've had in the summer months at 37 in late June at that, not even early June, and a very warm overnight low of 85, which is just disgusting. So you get a little bit of everything in the month of June. So good stuff here. I've posted some of the links here on some of the information on my Facebook page, not wishtv.com, on the Facebook page, Marcus Bailey Weather. Just search that out. If you are a little bit more interested in diving in deep on some of these weather statistics and you want to learn a little bit more about some of the things that happen as well. And we're looking forward to now moving on the back half of July. We're going to have a lot more fun episodes coming your way. Hoping to talk with a storm chaser here soon, coming off a trip out in the Central Plains, and it was pretty busy, so a pretty successful trip at that, and hopefully we'll jump on board with that here shortly in the coming weeks, and as we start moving into the month of July, summer in full force here in Central Indiana. We'll have your full extended forecast for Central Indiana coming your way next here on Weather Weekly. Alrighty, quick look at your forecast here as we head through this middle portion of the month of June. My goodness, where is the time going? We've got a pretty quiet week, honestly. This is pretty nice. Doesn't get much better for the middle of June. You're not too hot. We're not real humid here over the coming days. Here through Wednesday and Thursday, you're talking highs in the lower 80s. Now, you do have a kind of a weak boundary that'll come in here on Friday. It does pump the temperature up close to 90, and that will bring up some slightly higher humidity values. And it does appear that we'll have some scattered showers and storms that lead into Saturday morning. Right now, Father's Day weekend, not bad. I'm keeping much of Saturday dry. I think all day Sunday on Father's Day is dry as well with highs in the low 80s. The pattern does turn a little more active. It looks like to open up the new week next Monday. So that would be, let's see, the date next Monday is the 21st. So the week of the 20th could get a little busy here as early as Sunday night. And then we'll have our chances for showers and storms on Monday and Tuesday as well. No real significant shots of big time heat. And it doesn't look like we have any severe weather risks here over the next coming 8 days. The 6 to 10 day outlook calling for below average temperatures across much of the Great Lakes and the Midwest. Precip is looking to be above normal, and your 8 to 14 day outlook. So that will take you till the end of the month into early July. Again, pretty good chance for below average temperatures and above average precipitation. Not bad. We could use a little bit of rain, I know, in spots. We had some pretty good downpours this last week, but they were extremely isolated. What you would expect typically in the summertime with the high humidity, you get these pop-up downpours, but it's kind of feast or famine. Some people got a lot. Some people didn't get a drop. So that's what we're looking forward to here over the next couple of weeks, but nice to get into this summer-like pattern. Thank you so much for spending time with me here on Weather Weekly, and hope you really enjoyed this kind of look back at our June significant severe weather events. We'll have another great episode coming your way. Number 20 is next week, so we're excited about that. We'll give you an update on what we're looking at here for that episode as well. We hope you check us out. If you have any comments, concerns, complaints, suggestions, I'd love to hear them. I know there's a few of you that are listening to the podcast. If there's something that you specifically want to listen or hear about, shoot me an email, marcus.bailey@wishtv.com. You can also hit me up on social media. Facebook, look for Marcus Bailey Weather. And on Twitter and Instagram, it is @Marcus Bailey. I'd love to hear your suggestions or your comments about the podcast as we continue to try to grow that a little bit. We hope to hear you next time as we hit up episode number 20 here on Weather Weekly. And while you're here, don't forget to check out all our other great podcasts here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Discover more from Storm Track 8 Weather and Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Plus, be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.